to my boss? How am I relating to my students? How am I relating to my wife? How am I relating to my husband? How am I relating to my children? How am I relating to my parents? I can guarantee you the way you got up this morning depended radically on the way your relationships were going. Because that's who we are. But why are we that way? The reason why we're that way is because we're created in the image and likeness of God, and God is a relationship. We worship a relationship. So we're dominated by how our relationships are going. If our relationships are going good, we're okay. And I would like to suggest that the examination of consciousness is an examination of how our relationships are going. And I would like to suggest that the kingdom of God is really a kingdom of relationship. That what God is interested in continually in our lives when God moves into our lives is, how are you relating to your mother and your father and your children and your spouse and your boss and your community and your staff and your blah, 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 and the kids on the block and the janitors and the checkout girls and everybody else. That's the only thing God is really cares about. And that's the key to the examination of consciousness, to let God be God. And in Jesus, I think we understand what that means. Jesus said of himself, I, Jesus, am the way, the truth, and the life for you. Which means Jesus is the image of the unseen God. And we, as we look at that image of the God we've never seen, are transformed, as Paul says, from one glory to the next. And that is done by the Holy Spirit. And it's what we want is that transformation from one glory to the next. That's what we're after. That's what we're after. And so I have one series of questions as we begin this to ask of Jesus and to ask of us. What does it mean that God experienced? What does it mean that God experienced human life? What does it mean that God experienced human life as you and I experience it? What does that mean? What does that mean about human life? And what does it mean about your human life and my human life? That God experienced human life as you know it and I know. What does that mean? I would like to suggest that Jesus is the holiness of God, and that what Jesus experienced is the meaning of holiness. And I would like to suggest that you are not in charge of what holiness means. And I'm not in charge of what holiness means. You're not in charge, and I'm not in charge. Who's in charge? Jesus is in charge of what holiness means. Jesus makes the definitions of what's important. You don't make the definitions of what's important in life. I don't either. Jesus makes them. The creator and firstborn of all creation. And what I would like to suggest is that what holiness is what Jesus experienced. That is the meaning of holiness, and that is the only meaning of holiness. There is no other meaning. There is no other meaning. And what was Jesus' experience? I would like to suggest it was love, joy, need, fear, sorrow, and anger. And I would like to suggest that Jesus had a choice. That walking down the streets of Nazareth, Jesus, as he was growing up and walking down the streets of Nazareth, I think it went something like this, walking down the streets of Nazareth, and then finding as he walked down the street, he looked over here, this thing came out of his body that went, you know, and then as he walked down the street in Nazareth, he looked over there and he saw something else, this thing comes out of his body. Walking along the streets of Nazareth and looks over there, and this reaction comes out of his body. And question is, you know, did you see that? Oh, no. No, I didn't see it. No, I didn't see it. I didn't see it. It never happened. I didn't see it, and it never happened. And how do you feel about that? I never saw it. I don't have any feelings. Until you begin to realize that if you do that enough, you get sick. If you do that enough and you deny what's coming out of your body, it does something to your soul in a way that you can't give yourself as gift to anyone. That if you start to repress certain arenas of your experience, it's almost like, you know, you're usually wave to people, but all of a sudden you suppress this and you try to get this wave up. Oh, hi, how are you? Doesn't work. Like, I'm a real good friend of yours, and you did something that really made me angry, and I hear your steps coming down the hall, and usually go, hey, hi, how are you? Come on in. But because I don't know that and bring that up and don't have the freedom to bring that up, I hear your steps coming down, and I go, oh, hi. Hi, come in. Come in. Well, what happened to the smile? What happened to the spontaneity? I mean, what happened to this? And what I'd like to suggest is that what Jesus realized with great dread was if he was going to be who he was, he had to let the reactions that were coming in his body for what he saw around him, he had to let them be in his body, and he had to let them come out through the pores of his skin with great dread. And he made a decision that he would allow that to go on. And what I would like to suggest is that that is the meaning of the examination of consciousness. I'd like to begin as we look at our consciousness or unconsciousness before God of our experiences of love over the last hours. Do we experience love? Do we feel love? Do we have an ensemble of behaviors to express love, like 10 video cassettes to put in our video cassette recorder, or 10 floppy disks to put into our computer and to express the love that we feel? A word of support, a helping hand, shopping for someone sick, spending time with a prisoner, going on a date, spending the rest of your life with a person as your spouse, listening to someone, answering someone's question, untangling a kite string, carrying the lunch down to the beach, going back to the store for something you forgot? Or are you free to feel love and to feel those promptings? And the question, was Jesus ever loving? Did Jesus ever feel that kind of prompting and respond in the world to people around him? And we look at Jesus bringing the little children to himself and loving them and holding them and saying to the apostles, I'm not that busy. I'm not that busy to hold these little children. I know I got a big schedule. Or Jesus' reaction to the widow of Nain, the compassion and love in his heart for her. Can we be moved? Are we being moved to that? We look at our experiences over the last hours of love and their quality with a God who did respond in love. What we're really doing is giving God time to nurse us. And as we look at our experiences of love, we see certain dimensions of self-centeredness and the tender, loving care and call of God of showing us the opportunity, God's presence, God's nudging us to move into somebody else's life, relationship. Experiences of joy. The joy of a beautiful sunrise. A project that results in success. The joy that we feel as we jog through a forest or swim in a lake, teach a fine class, cook a wonderful meal, solve a computer problem, play the piano, the weather clears for our picnic. Our response is joy. Our response is joy. Can we enjoy? Are we free to enjoy over the last hours the gifts that God has given us? What is your experience of joy? Are you joyful? Can you enjoy? And what is God saying to you through your experience of joy and the quality of your ability to enjoy? Well, joy is just not one of those things that I can do. Well, I believe that. But the question is, what is God? Did Jesus ever enjoy himself? If we look at the wedding feast of Cana, we see that Jesus created 120 gallons of wine to keep the party going as his first miracle. And we know that Jesus was invited. And we know that we don't invite somebody who cannot genuinely enjoy themselves. If there's someone we know who can't genuinely enjoy themselves, somehow we find a way not to invite them. But Jesus was invited. What that means is that to enjoy is holy. And to be able to enjoy is what the holiness of God means. Why? Because Jesus enjoyed himself and enjoyed the celebrations of those around him. That means to do that is what holiness means. So what is happening to me in that arena? Is there a call by God, or is there a pain? And what does that mean? Is God happy about that? Experiences of need. Are we needy? Well, we need sleep, food, water, shelter, clothes, friends, love, warmth, schooling, exercise, a job, financial security, prayer, etc., just to begin with. Just to make it into the coffee room. We need coffee. But I'd like to just in this brief consideration center in on our need for human relationships. For us, in our society, to say authentically, "I need you," is a very terrifying experience. And independence in our society is so prized that to say, "I need you," is fraught with anxiety and very threatening. Example, for a woman right now to say that she needs a man, not very liberated here. We're not very liberated. And for a man these days to say that he needs a woman, unmacho. It makes for trouble in relationships. Because as Ignatius says in the contemplation to divine love, what love means is the mutual sharing of gifts. If I have something that I have, I share it with you. But what that means is you don't have it. You know, if you have something, a gift, you share it with me. That's what love means, mutual sharing of gifts. But if you share something with me, it means I don't have the gift. You have the gift. Don't want to be dependent. But if we look at Jesus, if we look at the experience of God and need, and we focus on the mystery that we've been focusing on, for instance, Christmas, and we see this little baby there who can't even hold up his head is just falling over. So the only way that this Jesus' head is going to be there straight is if someone holds it up, because he can't even hold up his head, which is what a baby is like. Jesus couldn't do for himself. He needed somebody from outside himself to do for him things he couldn't do for himself. Jesus was very needy. Very needy. And he asked others to do things for him that he couldn't do for himself. What that means is that to be needy is holy. To say, "I need you," is holy. Why? Because I said it? No. Because that's what Jesus did. And Jesus is the definition of holiness. It's pretty serious. The reason why it's pretty serious is, if I tell you what I need, I could be in debt. Not only that, if I tell you what I really want and what I really need, you could use it against me. Where one's own neediness is used to control one. Control. Whoa. To be controlled. What is Jesus saying to us as we go over our hours of trying to control everything? Of not being needy, not needing anyone. Jesus seems to suggest, and this is the question, Jesus is making the same decisions now, today, in our lives that he made walking down the streets of Nazareth. It's the same thing. There is no change. There is no change. It's the same thing all over again in us. The same dreadful decision that Jesus took up and looked eyeball to eyeball at and said, "I will be who I am in my body. I will be that in the world. I will allow what is happening in my body to come out through the pores of its skin. I suggest that's what the examination of consciousness is. The question of allowing that to come out through the pores of our skin. And the grace of God living the life of Jesus in Nazareth in us. What it means is that to be needy is holy. Experiences of fear. Do we humans experience fear? Well, we're afraid of war, of heights, of wild animals like lions and snakes and bears and mice. No, fear of earthquakes, of driving, fear of floods, hurricanes, fear of being attacked, fear of being raped, fear of being robbed, fear of being harmed, fear of being abandoned. For just a few, I'm sure you could go on and on. The thing about fear is that fear paralyzes us. The common phrase is the person was frozen in fear. And most of the time what that means is that when we're afraid of something, we really don't know what it is we're afraid of. And an anxiety level or an embarrassment level begins to grow in us in a way that paralyzes us.